Having talked about the performance of the economy, which gives us a very strong foundation, we go to the part 2 of this presentation. We look at the issues of long-term importance to the Indian economy, which are covered in detail in the economic survey. First, the outcome of rising global uncertainty for the country is the effect on the capital account and therefore on the currency. As an emerging market and a capital importing country, developments in India's external account reflects the impact of the rise in global uncertainty. India's gross FDI has been growing very well. In FY26, gross FDI is at least 10% higher than last year, but net FDI has been on the weaker side, partly because of profit taking by investors who have invested in the earlier decades, and also because of the compulsion that Indian businesses face to invest overseas. So ODI by Indian businesses has also increased. So as a result, net FDI numbers are not where we would like them to be, although they are not alarming. Portfolio investors have various reasons. One is the valuation and the lack of a so-called AI story in India, and also the overall uncertainty caused by the tariff situation is holding them back from committing more money into the Indian market. But as a contrarian, when sentiment towards India is actually on the weaker side, that is when the future prospective returns will look the brightest, actually. And if you look at the currency, therefore, as a country that depends on imported capital to meet a current account deficit, even though the deficit itself is on the lower side, if capital flows become weaker, naturally the currency reflects that. And that is what we have seen in the last 1 year, with the rupee weakening against the dollar by about 6 to 7%. This is in spite of the stellar economic fundamentals we have. So it has got nothing to do with the macro picture. It is simply accounting that if you are a current account deficit country, you need to import capital. And when capital flows become weaker due to global factors, remember, in the second decade, interest rates were close to zero in the developed world. They are now between 4 and 5% as well. So the opportunity cost of investing overseas is higher. So that is what shows up in the currency, and it is not a reflection of the macroeconomic fundamentals. The second issue that we need to tackle is long-term fiscal sustainability will require consistency in centers' efforts, which we have seen demonstrated in the last 5 years, and also prudence and commitment on the part of the states. The Centre's Special Assistance Scheme for Capital Investments has incentivized states, without which their capex would be lower. This is from the National Family Health Survey 4. The 5 will be released soon, I think. But the important thing is, Indian obesity is a major issue for reaping the demographic dividend. Physical health, mental health, emotional health, all 3 factors are necessary apart from skilling and education for the country to be able to reap the demographic dividend. So this economic survey, while in the last 2 surveys we have focused much more on mental health, this time we also focus on the physical health aspect. And one early and easy step that the private sector can take is to allow food labeling to reflect the risks of what people are consuming. So compared to other countries in the region and globally, Indian food labeling can improve so that the people can make conscious choices in what they eat, etc. And therefore, obesity is an important factor, and it will not be addressed only by government efforts. It requires citizens' consciousness and private sector cooperation as well. So when I spoke about the data cost being the lowest in the world, I said it's a mixed blessing, and here it is why. Compulsive scrolling and social comparison is linked to anxiety and depressive symptoms, and we have been covering it in the previous 2 economic surveys, and we continue to do so. But we are very happy to note that Andhra Pradesh government is contemplating restricting social media for children under 16, so is the Goan government, etc. But it is again a matter of policy and conscious choices to be made by citizens themselves, because exposure to screen time, sedentary lifestyle, ultra-processed food consumption increase the risk of anxiety and suicidal thoughts significantly among our adolescents and also in the people in the early working age population as well. And this is a silent scourge, and we need to fix that if we are going to achieve our long-term growth aspirations. Education and skilling is slightly more familiar turf for all of us, but even here, the news is encouraging. A lot of us are concerned about how we will fare in the AI era. The good news is that employers actually still value soft skills, engagement, self-efficacy, working with others, adaptability, and management skills matter a lot more than technological skills. But it's important, therefore, also to prepare our youth to look at areas which are not necessarily university education driven, but could be vocational and professional skills. In other words, we have to make vocational and technical and professional skills more fashionable and respectable than we have been doing so far. And this too is a combined initiative of the industry, the private sector, households, and the government, and not just a policy matter alone. If you look at the areas which are immune to AI diffusion, these are elder care and nursing, culinary arts, advanced tool and die specialization, early special needs education, public health outreach, environmental restoration. All of them can be pursued in areas because we have shortage of skilled personnel in these areas, and they're also resistant to the diffusion of AI in terms of future employment and income earning prospects. The last economic survey had a special chapter on AI, and this survey continues that. And the issues are with respect to the following that this chapter covers: the data center resource consumption, whether it is power or water or land, the kind of financial requirements for the large language models in the current ecosystem in the Western world, and data localization for domestic value creation, of course, the macro question of mitigating the labor market impact, navigating geopolitical constraints to hardware access, including chips, and importantly, from a geopolitical security and dependability perspective, can we continue to depend on foreign models for use in public administration and critical sectors? Of course, the government is already making its position very clear. We are going to be looking at developing local models, which are underway actually, and some of it may be rolled out in the course of the AI summit next month. But these are the various trade-offs that this chapter 14 tackles. Now, this is another issue which we have been flagging in the last few economic surveys. India is committed to net zero by 2070. And India is one of the better performing countries in terms of installation of solar and wind power in the world. At the same time, if we have to become more pervasive as a share of overall energy generation, if renewable energy were to become a significant part of the energy picture, we need to understand the ramifications. The amount of material required and the energy required to therefore generate renewable energy should not be underestimated. We should go into it with open eyes, and that is what this screen shows you. It is self-explanatory. Therefore, this chapter, like in the previous occasions, does focus on adaptation, demand management, and also this time we are happy to share with you in chapter 10 the kind of environmental regulations that have been liberalized and made easier in terms of compliance, etc., compared to the past. And that is a very positive story that is also captured in chapter 10. The special essay this time is on urbanization, apart from the sequel to AI. In Indian cities, we face a multiplicity of challenges. One is the low floor space index and floor area ratio. Mobility is a challenge because last mile connectivity is still missing, although metro rail network has expanded significantly in the last 10 to 11 years. Solid waste management and waste disposal are still important issues with growing population and growing cities, and governance is dispersed among multiple agencies. But looking at this chapter, if you read it carefully, you will understand that getting urbanization right is not just, once again, as in the case of healthy food consumption or social media usage, is not just a matter of getting policy right. Citizens have an important role to play. We behave very differently in metro stations, and we behave very differently above the surface. And why is that case? Why is it so? our behavior in the metro is absolutely impeccable, but not so above the ground. So, why does it happen, and what can be done to make sure that there is no difference in the way citizens respond to metro rail as well as public transportation or road discipline? How is it possible, and what kind of behavioral dynamics are at work here, and how can the state facilitate and nudge the citizens to do so? These kinds of interesting issues are explored in chapter 15, along with a discussion of some specific experiments going on in different parts of the country, which actually point the way forward for the rest of the country as well. Now, moving on to part 3, I would like to compliment Business Standard for this wonderful line, which I use. India's growth story sits at the intersection of